When you think that your sculpture is done, your creature design, we now have to start considering how it's going to work with the 3D printer. Not every design will be successful in the 3D printer, so what we want to do is take a look at our design. That's the very first thing we're going to do before we even actually get it ready for 3D printing. We're just going to look at the design. One consideration is how is your creature going to stand up? So notice that my creature here, he has, pardon me, he has feet, but they're not really like flat to the ground. So not really sure how this creature is going to stand up on its own. One simple way to do that is to add a platform, which we'll do in a different 3D program called Blender, and I'll show you that in a different video. If your creature is going to be standing on its own, then you're going to want to make sure that the feet are flat on the ground, or it sits on something. Another consideration is horizontal spans. So for instance, right here between the legs of this creature, the 3D printer prints starting at the bottom and then it works its way up. So if it has to go across a wide horizontal distance, this can be really problematic because it doesn't have any support underneath to keep it from dropping down. So what happens is the printer will start going across the span, and at some point it just starts to kind of droop the strand that it's extruding. So in order to fix this, something you could do, for instance, on this particular model, is you could create kind of an arch in the space between the legs. I might do that using the grab tool. Do something like this, so that when I'm printing, it's not doing a horizontal span anymore. It now has this arch like a bridge, and that will actually make it a lot more successful in its print. Oops. So that's one thing. Another thing is to look at the same thing on the arms here. You've got these kind of horizontal span, and so this can be a problem because again, if it reaches out and it goes back down, imagine that the printer's going straight across here. It's going to try to print this finger and then try to print right here, but there's nothing between it. So if you want to have a hand or something sticking out like this, you're going to want to move it up so it's angled up more. So I'm making a nice size tool here of my grab tool so that I can grab just the arm, and I'm angling it up. In addition, I'm also going to want to angle up this particular finger because it's curving back down, and that's not going to work so good for 3D printing. So I can make my tool even smaller to grab just this piece, and so on. So I'm going to continue to work on this until I've got it kind of up like that. That's pretty cool. So you might have to modify your creature a little bit, so you may have to tweak this one too, until you've gotten rid of anything that's straight horizontal, anything that you want to has to angle upwards, and then you want to take a look at, let's look at the back here. This tail. This is a pretty difficult one. What we might consider doing is actually chopping this off and using that 3D program I mentioned, Blender, and printing it as a separate piece and then gluing it on after they're both printed. I think that's probably your best bet in terms of success for this tail. Again, when the printer, it starts out here and it's fine, and then it curves up, and that's great, but when it gets to this point right here, it's going to try to print here, and then it's going to try to print here, and then it's going to go across here and then here, and there's nothing here. There's nothing to support this, so what's going to happen is this is just going to drop away. So I will show you how to do that in a separate 3D program.